Good morning, afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I would like to welcome everyone to Pentaho's webinar, Reporting, Visualization, and Predictive from Hadoop, the fourth and final webinar in our four-part Big Data Integration webinar series. Now I'd like to introduce today's presenters. We have Davey Neese. He's the VP of our EMEA and Asia Pacific markets here at Pentaho. We have Chuck Yarborough. He's our Technical Solutions Marketing Lead here at Pentaho. And I'll now turn it over to Davey to begin the presentation. Take it away, Davey.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. So for today, I'm calling in from the sunny Belgium where it happens to be raining today. We're going to take you through this fourth webinar in our webinar series we've been doing on big data integration and analytics. So in the previous sessions, we focused a lot around data warehouse optimization, the data integration part, and how you can get started with big data and how Pentaho can help you to operationalize Hadoop and all the other parts of big data sources like NoSQL and analytical databases. Today we're going to focus on probably what most people experience as the more fun stuff, the pretty stuff, the sexy stuff. What eventually users will see when they start to visualize their data and get to insights from data that is sitting in Hadoop or coming in through Hadoop or all these various data sources. Now, so the goals for today, what we want to cover is give you a little bit of our view on a spectrum of information needs, because there are a couple of tools out there and approaches that we see out in the market, but we do believe that having a bigger picture on the problem at hand is quite important to avoid that you end up treating the symptoms versus curing the disease. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So we'll talk about how to prepare so that you can deliver a full business analytics solution and what you can expect from both an architectural needs, sort of speaking, and what your end users may drive you to in terms of addressing those needs and making sure you got the architecture set up to please them. And then finally, we'll touch upon how predictive analytics and big data are related, because we definitely see a strong relationship between them, and predictive analytics, in our view, is definitely driving big data, but also the other way around. So we thought it would be good to give you some of those insights and some of the things that we're experiencing and how we look at things and how we see the industry moving towards helping predictive analytics to cross the chasm, if you like, and helping to make more accessible for everybody. Now, starting off, we kind of want to take a long step back and sort of look at why customers and people implement all these solutions to begin with. Because we're not doing this for hobby purposes or sort of, hey, we have nothing else to do. There are really some good reasons why people eventually say, hey, we're going to grab a set of data, we want to drive this through a whole process, and then eventually gain some insights from this data. And the four areas that we typically run into with our customers and sort of, even our competitors' customers are to increase operational efficiencies. And this is our effectiveness. This is all around how can I lower costs? How can I replace a manual process with a more automated process? How can I, analyze root causes for certain problems and then take corrective action? The next level is more positive-oriented and is around maximizing revenue. Often around new services, around new products, around understanding relationships between various products, making sure they're pushed through the appropriate channel, and ultimately, so how can we increase growth and sell more of what we have? Underneath that are definitely, and especially now with big data, and that was something that Gartner sort of experienced in one of their latest BI summits. They discovered that most people in the U.S. are actually focusing a lot of their big data projects on improving customer experience. That's not just only for big data, but also for general business analytics. So how can we have informed conversations with our customers, understand them better? And understanding has definitely moved away from segmentation of groups of customers to really the individual. We have so much data, and we have the capacity to process that data. So how can we basically earn their loyalty, trust for many years to come? And then finally, still a big driver, especially around retention and around certain reporting requirements, is to achieve compliance. What obligations do I have as a company to store data for a certain amount of time? How can I assess certain risks? And what is my risk position? I think of Basel 1, 2, 3, and all those regulations, and the regulatory reporting, but also, for instance, to explain certain funding positions on grants and all those situations. So basically, how can we sustain governmental and public trust and make sure we do what we are obliged to do? Now, those four areas, and if you look at any initiative, any project that we see, whether it's data analytics or even standard analytics, you can always drive them to one or more of these four initiatives. Now, if you keep those initiatives in mind and you then look at some of those things like, for instance, maximizing revenue, and you would look at the information needs, it is not a clear-cut sort of answer to how people will interact with data or information sitting in any data store. And for instance, if you're a sales manager and you're trying to manage a target, and just like myself, the first thing you want to do almost on a daily basis is just know where you are. And as long as what you see as your position, so from a typical report or from a dashboard, and you're happy with where you are, you probably are just going to move on. If everything is green, sort of speaking, all the traffic lights are green, you just want to move on, manage your business, have conversations with your team, have conversations with your customers, and just to continue to manage, the overall high-level parts of your business. You want to, at that point, you want to have as little as interaction as possible with any analytics tools. Just a matter of opening up a dashboard, no interaction, no clicks, no drill downs or anything, just knowing where you are or open a report that may be sitting in your email inbox. And as soon as you have that, you move on. And we have customers, for instance, that have implemented for that specific reason what they call the 10-minute dashboard. It's like 10 minutes looking at it and move on to do your actual job, which is to manage the business. If for some reason it's not great, either it's super green, you're well beyond where you expect it to be, or you're well below where you want it to be, so there's kind of a mismatch in the thresholds, then at that point you want to analyze the root cause. And it's at that point that drill downs and typical analytic actions come into play. But it's only at that point. There's no reason to do that if you're perfectly fine and where you expect it to be. So at that point, you want to analyze a little bit. And typically, those analytics will happen on a very predictive path. And so, for instance, if I take it back to our business, it's around, which region is potentially underperforming, which product line is potentially underperforming, where are we doing extremely well? Can we repeat that? What if certain partners are doing well? What kind of partners are outperforming other types of partners? So it's that sort of analytics that is pretty predictable and still fairly easy to do, and it will help you to do corrective actions. But again, you don't want to spend days and weeks in this tool or technology. You just want to again come to some conclusions, some corrective action you can take, and then move on through either self-service analytics or drill down reporting. If for some reason you still can't discover what's going on, at that point you need a more free and open environment where you can start combining data and make calculations in a more sort of freely acceptable world, still with certain boundaries, still within a certain sandbox if you like, but ultimately you want to be able to discover new insights that may be more complex sort of drill downs that are less predictable, that may help you to drive new strategy and new initiatives, that may even get you into data mining, for instance, like detecting some correlations about certain product lines, about certain products that may sell well together, or eventually some custom calculations that are ad hoc on the day for a specific reason, and that you may do only once, or that may be repeatable. Because that's also part of this whole spectrum of information is once you start to understand or analyze certain things and you've discovered that these are things that you want to know on a regular basis, you want to be able to pull them into something that allows you to capture the information information easily, so that next time around you don't have to go through the whole exercise again of clicking that whole information path back together. The same with discovery. There's a lot of discovery items that you may do and you may only have to do once and then disregard them. There are a smaller amount of discoveries that you may do and that you want to repeatedly do and just make part of your whole, easy, accessible know culture. So the next time around, it's just a matter of opening up a report or getting that report pushed to you or making it part of a dashboard that you can open up on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And then the final piece of sort of this whole spectrum of information needs is kind of moving away from looking at the past, whether that past was 5 seconds ago or a second ago or a week, a month, a quarter ago or a year ago. It's now about, hey, let's look at the future. Let's see if we can make some predictions. Let's see, again, we can do some strategy and planning exercises. And that can range from very simple time series forecasting models that are pretty standard to very complex logic that may, require 86, criteria into, a regression model or something like that, or a decision tree, and then ultimately drive certain coefficients that you can make decisions and assumptions on. And again, part of that, making those predictions part of the rest of those other assets that you may be drilling into is very important. So what we see and why we try to hammer on this a little bit with our customers is because sometimes when you start thinking about certain exercises, you have a very limited view on what you really need or what you think your users or business users may need for that specific request. But it's about understanding how they will consume information. That's important to understand what eventually will drive future requests from the business so that you ultimately can deliver a platform and a solution that will cure the disease, the information needs, and not just some of the symptomatic behavior that you see, like pulling up an Excel file and trying to go at a data source themselves or using some other tools that are purely focused on doing analytics only and nothing else. Now, if we now look at the overall architecture, there's obviously a couple of other parts that are important to make this happen. One is you have to be able to access the data that you require for all these activities. And then obviously you need to be able to model them in such a way, especially the first two, modeling is very important because it will allow you, to go through those predicted drill paths and give you a lot of control of how people within their sort of sandbox can look at the information. Because again, having one version of the truth, being united on certain, pretty basic elementary metrics is critical and is important. It's okay that you go outside the box when you start to discover and make certain predictions. Those can be a little bit more personalized. But if you're talking about some core metrics about your business, it is very important that everybody's on the same page because otherwise you get, a lot of duplication of effort. So a lot of the things that you're trying to do at that point will be negated by people trying to, get to a situation where their numbers are just looking better than somebody else's numbers. And then finally, which is critical, is obviously a platform that allows you to share all those different components so that, again, people can share their discoveries, their analytics, their dashboards with others, and ultimately, be on the same page in terms of those metrics. All right. I think it's time before we move into the architectural side of things and sort of look at how that impacts the architecture. We're going to do a quick polling question. And the first question we have today is, what capabilities do you anticipate needing immediately to support your big data analytics workflows? And you can choose all that applies. And so we have reporting, dashboards, data discovery visualization, predictive analytics, and then if you're unsure, you can click unsure. We'll give it a few seconds before we skip to results. But I think we're sort of close to getting all the answers. There is a clear winner. Let me click on skip the results. Is that okay, Michelle? Okay. There you go. So no surprise, as we will go through the architectural impact of those requirements, data discovery, visualization is definitely sort of the leading capability that we expect for big data analytics, and we'll see that big data analytics is definitely driving that requirement. Then the same with predictive. So again, not a surprise there, but also traditional reporting and dashboards will be a key factor, and that again sort of is in line with what we see. A lot of those data discovery elements are things that you want to bring back to people in very easy, accessible formats. And reports and dashboards are still the most easy ones that people can access. All right, so if you were part of our previous webinar series, we've shown this architectural slide a couple of times. It shows sort of the big data architecture. Now you have your traditional data sources, ERP, CRM systems. On the one hand side, that probably flow into a data warehouse, from which you may distill some analytical data marts, and then you may have some other data sources that you either directly or through NoSQL may pump into Hadoop, and then again you may extract from those that data some additional data into the data warehouse, or may do some lookups from the data warehouse, and then eventually push some of that data after some MapReduce jobs into an analytical data mart, so that you can, provide analytics and reporting on top of that. Now, if we sort of look at the impact and sort of information needs where they're sitting in this architecture, and sort of the kind of tools that you most likely will need on top of these, this is sort of the picture we've been seeing. So the traditional data warehouse, that's where you define your very well-defined metrics, structures. There's a lot of structure and rigid definitions in there. So, perfectly okay for reporting, dashboarding, analytics, because you exactly know what the structures are. The drill-down paths are very predictable. So again, you would expect that people would just want to know and analyze what's in there, okay? As they pull data out of the data warehouses, then you still get that same sort of culture around in terms of knowing and analyzing what's in there. For the more advanced users, they'll want to have a flavor of discovery. They want to have discovery tools that allows them to do more advanced analytics, and that will allow them to maybe ad hoc connect a different data source to some of the data sitting into those analytical data marts, so that they can discover new insights. In terms of the NoSQL, on the one hand, you have pure reporting, pure search and report on data sitting into a NoSQL data store, so simple retrieval, and then also some discovery. It's pretty sort of understandable that it's going to be hard to do any analytics or any analyzing onto a NoSQL database, because it just lacks at this moment in time the query language and infrastructure to even support that. So for now, it's more around knowing and discovery, and then seeing how you can then potentially link that with other information. If you look then at Hadoop, that's where, again, you see a lot of discovery and prediction. Again, analyzing or analytics is, for now, still not part of it, mainly due to some of the limiting factors that you have with Hadoop. There are some certain developments like Impala that probably will allow some analytics to eventually get into Hadoop. But for now, it's more oriented around discovering new sets of data and trying to get some interesting fun facts that you, not fun facts or important facts that you may want to pull into an analytical data mart for analytics. But that is a process step. That is not something that you just do as part of. And then prediction, obviously, with some of the R Revolution language, the Mahout, and then also Weka and Pentaho data integration, you can do a lot of prediction engines and mechanisms onto Hadoop as part of MapReduce. Now, what we discover, and when we talk to our customers, is there's still a lot of, so everybody understands this, everybody understands what the needs are, people understand sort of which components to use, but there's still a lot of struggle in terms of getting the solution up and running. And partially there's the business user demand that is very rapid pace, but at the same time the need for intuitive and simple tools and being completely in control. But then obviously there's the challenges to deliver on those demands, whether that's from a budget perspective, the complexity, the lack of integration with data sources. For instance, some tools have had a pure big data focus and therefore lack all the capabilities that allow you to connect that back to some of the things you need to know from your traditional data warehouse. Others are coming more from a traditional angle and potentially lack the capabilities to deal with, for instance, the data explosion through big data solutions. So what we see out there is a lot of symptomatic corrective action. People trying to sort of treat some of these, we sometimes call it rogue analytics as well. So people trying to attack these problems in a very siloed manner. But ultimately, what will happen is that people will outgrow those solutions fairly quickly. It's from two perspectives. One, it will ultimately not give them the capabilities to share easily and connect with other parts of their business. And then secondly, at one point people will say, hey, I'm not paying you to spend, hours and hours playing with analytics tools during the day. I want you to manage a business. I want you to manage a team. And for that, we can't go through all these exercises in trying to hack data together. There has to be some structure, and we have to push some of that over to other mechanisms in delivering data. So there has to be this, what we always call the rhythm between IT and the business has to be in sync so that we can gain at a competitive advantage that we were looking for from the beginning. So from our perspective, what you need in a big data analytics platform is really something that can help you with that the access to information, so the data integration parts, and all levels of visualization and analytics. So whether that is enterprise and ad hoc reporting, whether that is data discovery, visualization, and dashboarding, and then obviously predictive analytics, and not just on top of one type of database, but you need something that can connect to all these different types of databases, because ultimately they will make part of your architecture, and you want to be able to leverage a platform that can do that. So one of the things that we want to do before we go into demo is do one other poll question. But then I want to hand it over to Chuck. We will, show some of, the capabilities that we can do with Pentaho and how Pentaho comes into play in attacking these problems. So as we go along, let's do another poll question. And the next one is, what are your plans with predictive analytics? And the options are, we're already using it for years. We just started. We're thinking about it. You don't have plans because it may be too challenging, or you don't have plans because it's just simply not appropriate for your business, because that's the other part. Predictive analytics is not something that is applicable to every data set. So we give it a few more seconds before we'll skip the results. Actually, we can skip to the results so they can see them move a little bit. So we do have a clear winner. The one thing I must say that does surprise me that in theory about 89% of people actually do actively think about predictive analytics, are already using it. So only 10%, 11%, just bumped up to 12, has no plans whatsoever. So that's a little surprising, to be honest. But the good thing, it's no surprise that a lot of people are thinking about it right now. And like I said, after the demo, we'll dive into a little bit on why we believe that is and how big data and big data analytics can help you there. Having said that, I'll give it now to Chuck, who will take you through a quick demo.
Well, thanks, Davey. Glad to be here. So I'm going to share my desktop. Let's see if we can get this to work. All right. So you should be seeing my desktop. And what I have on display is a dashboard. So Davey talked a little bit about knowing and understanding and analyzing and discovering and predicting. Dashboards are something that we probably all dealt with, but it's really about knowing. It's the things that we know we want to look at on a regular basis. So here is a product sales breakdown dashboard that I'm going to come in and look at on a regular basis, because in this scenario, I work for a die-cast toy manufacturer called Steel Wheels, and I sell, we sell globally toys and different product lines. So in my product sales breakdown dashboard, you can see that I have my total sales within North America by product line. So quick visualization into how each product line is performing. On the right, I can see a little report that shows total sales by supplier. And then at the bottom, I've got my sales trend across time, showing the seasonality and all the things that go over time in selling a particular line of cars. If I were to change the territory to Europe, I can see that I'm stronger in different product lines and get a good view of how things are happening across the different geographies that I work. Now, another typical use within reporting and analysis for knowing is looking at reports that can be distributed, sent out an email. They can be linked to as PDF files or HTML files, however you want to display those. This is a quick example of a report that shows my top customers. I can drop down with different product lines, regions, and of course customers. I'll change that to the top 10 list so I can see quickly who my top 10 customers in a nice formatted fixed report. Again, we've been talking about big data. And the key ingredient, the key important thing here is, at this point, the data could reside in a number of different places, both in the traditional big data sources or in more structured sources. So I'm going to go ahead and open up one more dashboard. This is my sales KPI dashboard. And again, it's about knowing. So I can look at this, and across the top, I quickly see that amongst my geographies, EMEA is my strongest geography, and North America is lagging a little bit. So it's an indicator to me that I may need to put a little more effort in North America and focus on certain regions there. Now, again, this goes back to knowing. So when I want to analyze, now we step into our analysis tool, select on my data source, and now I can create my own view into the data. Allow me to drill in so that I can begin to really understand what's going on. So my first step is to double-click on sales. I'll bring territory in, and right here, very quickly, I have a very plain, basic analytic that most of us have probably seen many times, which I can also display in the format of a visualization, of a graphic. And there are lots of different options. There's the traditional bar lines, pies, area charts, scatter, heat grids. There's also some pretty slick visualization, such as tree maps, cross filters, geo maps, and lots and lots of options that you can switch between. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just pick our good old friend, the pie chart, which shows me a quick view of how things are going across the country or across the world. But I really want to do something a little bit nicer, so I'm going to change that to a sunburst. With one data point, it gives me basically a donut, but now I'm going to bring in my product line, and I can now visualize quickly where I'm doing well, which clearly my strongest product line and geo is EMEA for classic cars. North America clearly is struggling in some of these other areas. So from here, I can continue to drill down, drive into other questions to gain the understanding of what's really going on. Now, I'm going to switch gears and go to InstaView. InstaView is our big data discovery tool. Here, I am going to open up a InstaView template that is driven by data stored in Mongo, one of the big data, one of the NoSQL databases out there. And this particular template is around sales penetration. So in this particular demo, we show we have all the sales loaded, and what we want to do is we want to focus in on particular territory. In addition to sales data, we also have sales penetration data that tells us how much, what kind of sales penetration we have by particular geos, all the way down to the zip code level, which is all calculated within the Mongo environment. Now, I'm going to go ahead and put in my city and state and click Run. Now, what's going to happen, it's going to happen really fast. In fact, what I want to do is I want to click back on Configure because I want to step back and show you what really happened. So I put in my city and state, and then it did a very quick data integration process where it reached out to Mongo. In fact, let's open it up and take a quick look. This is the integration that actually happened on the fly. This connection is into Mongo, and it did a number of different procedures, including calculating distance, and then eventually pulling in sales data to make the output. Now, let me jump back into InstaView. So then the very next step, and this is really important, is that it on the fly created a model that we can then use to report off of. And that's important because nobody had to tell it what to do. The integration ran, and then the data set the model was created at the time of read. So as that data set changes, the model changes automatically. And then the final step is that it puts it into the data cache so we can do analytics. So I'm going to go ahead and rerun that process, and you'll see what I get is basically what you saw in the analyzer tool. Similar kind of, or basically the same layout. Now, here, I'm going to bring in sales penetration. I'm going to drag in my city. I'm going to sort this high to low. I'm going to drag in population. I'm now going to change this to a chart, the column line combo chart. Now, I'm going to move penetration down to this, down to the measures line, so that I now see the tall bars are my population, and the penetration is the line that runs through it. And you can see that there's a few places where we have higher population and lower penetration, but clearly the most interesting are these two right here. So I'm just going to select those, do a keep only. Now I'm focused on those cities that have the highest population, lowest sales penetration. I'm now going to bring in my zip codes, and you can see, again, similar view where I can see my sales penetration by zip code count. So I can see that over here I've got probably my biggest problem area, or perhaps my biggest opportunity, because what I'm really trying to do here is focus in, zero in on the zip codes that I can now hand off to marketing. And what they can do is they can focus on these zip codes with a specific marketing campaign to drive sales amongst these high population, low penetration areas. So really quickly, we've gone from traditional dashboards, reports, the ability to analyze data, and then to reach out on the fly to big data and generate sophisticated analytics easily without a lot of development time. Now, the one last thing I want to show before I turn it back over to Davey is the idea of creating custom dashboards. So the dashboards that I showed are very, very easy to create. Anybody can do it, and they're effective. And but there are times when you have very specific requirements to what's going to be displayed and what the look and the feel is going to be. So I want to show you what can be done, sort of the art of the possible with Pentaho. This is a live dashboard that shows sales and gross profit along with quantities. And the requirement here was very, very specific, so it wasn't something that the customer really wanted out of the box. It needed to be developed. But this is what you can do with the framework that Pentaho provides. And then the ability to change and look at quantities over, versus gross profit. So again, just a quick little snapshot of the kinds of things you can do. So, Davey, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you if you want to take control.
Okay. Thanks for that, Chuck. All right. So to get you back engaging, let's do another poll question. And so question we have is, who do you anticipate being the first users to access and leverage big data in your organization? So CEO, executives, business users, data analysts, data scientists, or other. Now, one of the things that I hope while you answer this question, one of the things I hope you realize, and sort of in seeing the demo, from our perspective, there's very little differentiation between what we call a standard business analytics platform and a big data business analytics solution. We think those are sort of merging into each other, and you need to be able to address all kinds of data sources, and ultimately the visualizations will roughly be similar to some of the things we've been doing in the past. It's just another magnitude of data that you got to deal with. But one thing that sets big data apart, and that can definitely have an impact, is what we'll review in a bit, which is predictive analytics. So let's show the results here. It's about 43%. The majority thinks that data analysts will be the first exploring big data solutions, followed by business users, which definitely makes sense, and then data scientists, and then ultimately CEOs and executives. So again, it's pretty much in line with what you expect, so that ultimately the people who are targeted to deal with these solutions are not that different from the people who already have been dealing with information right now and data right now. And it's just a matter of dealing with a different set of data and at a different scale. So talking about that, so what will big data do for predictive analytics? So for one, we think it will help cross the chasm. Because here's the thing, and let's start. So predictive analytics, and I just want to read out this sentence just once for dramatic effect. So the power to predict who will click, buy, lie, or die. Especially the last one is pretty dramatic. But then again, we are working with a hospital actually that is helping to prevent and doing some risk assessments on potential medical episodes and seeing how those can be prevented with preventive care. So it is very, very accurate, actually. But the problem with predictive analytics before was, people were just struggling. Why would you want to do something that's going to be difficult? It's going to be very expensive in terms of data processing and storage, and ultimately will probably render poor and inaccurate results, because that often was how people perceive predictive analytics. But definitely recent sort of evolutions have changed. First of all, on the hardware side and on the big data side. So things like Hadoop, which you can run on commodity hardware, so you no longer need exclusive supercomputers and very expensive storage to store your data. All of a sudden, you can run a distributed storage and processing platform on commodity hardware. All of a sudden, you have software, much open source based, that can help you to process that data, store it, make it accessible, and even, through R, Weka, and even process that from a predictive perspective. And then you have data and the explosion of data. Because if there's one thing that predictive analytics needs, it is data, lots of data. Often people, sometimes we come into conversations with prospects like, I want to do data mining, I want to do predictive analytics. And then we look at their data availability, and then, you can't make accurate predictions if you only have 50 records. You need a very good subset of data that's very representative of your business. So the fact that we are exploding, generating more and more data, and now have the hardware software that's economically affordable to store it and to work with it, and that's where obviously the big data sort of solution comes into play, that really will help the adoption of predictive analytics. Now, on the other side, we also see that predictive analytics is driving big data. So the overall adoption, people wanting to do predictive analytics all of a sudden see now big data as the solution, and there's just an adoption of further development of Weka, for instance. We see it's going beyond traditional industries. A lot of our customers, for instance, come from the gaming industry, so away from some of the traditional industries. They now want to understand why people buy swords and how they influence other people and how they can leverage that. So it's beyond the financial industry, beyond the retail industry, people with deep pockets from the past. Predictive analytics is very data hungry. As you get more data, you want more correlations, you want more aspects, more historic data. And originally it was really held back by some of the storage capabilities that we talked about earlier, that a terabyte of data could easily set you back $100,000. So all of a sudden, if those limitations disappear, and it's a lot more affordable to store and process data, then you can drive it further. And obviously, we're generating and capturing more data. But there's also sort of the coming of new persona as the data scientist, this new role that organizations are creating, and that is specifically driven for this mad psychological psychogeniuses that can, through statistics, analyze human behavior, put that down into formulas, and then apply that for other people on data sets. And that obviously is, again, helping the adoption and also the adoption of predictive, but also driving big data solutions. There is then this whole new generation with a different perspective, and there's definitely the need for organizations and the desire also to shift to the individual. While people were perfectly happy marketing to segments, to target audiences, now people are just figuring out how they can target the individual. Now, finally, one thing that is a trap is you can't predict if you don't know. So it is still very important to understand your core metrics and KPIs before you jump into predictive analytics, because then it becomes really troublesome. You sort of have to see that spectrum of information needs, not just as a spectrum, but also almost as a maturity life cycle. If you still have issues with getting your core metrics in line, then don't try to solve things with predictive, because it will really, get you into a lot of problems. Finally, I want to stop this whole 4-part webinar series around big data with the first slide that we showed on the first webinar we did, which was Data is the New Oil. And I hope that through this series you had a good idea on how big data solutions, how Pentaho, how Hadoop, how all these different database types can help you implement the solution. And then in this last one, how then ultimately what sort of considerations you need to make as you start to visualize that data and make it available to your business user community, your executives, your data analysts. Because we, from our perspective, obviously we are in the industry, but we also work with a lot of customers. We see what impact some of the solutions that we help them set up have on their business, and we strongly believe that they're setting themselves apart from the competition. So for us, this is a very true statement, and I hope that this webinar series has helped you. So as we go into the QA, I want to leave it off, so we'll jump into QA right now, but I just want to show the four webinars we did. If you missed one, no worries. We have all the recordings available. You can simply go to pentaho.com, review the recording, and we also will make all the content available, the presentations in PDF format, and you will get some emails to remind you of that content and make it available. Otherwise, again, you can always go to pentaho.com, from which you can also download our platform if you want to start playing around with technology and get your hands dirty. Having said that, let's roll into Q&A. Chuck, did you see any questions that you wanted to tackle to begin with?
Sorry, Davey. I was on mute. Yeah, there was an interesting question. Somebody was asking about combining social media data with existing data warehouse information. And from a visualization perspective, all the visualization tools are available. The key is getting that data and organizing it appropriately. And that's one of the things where InstaView, the data discovery tool that I showed, really excels. In fact, there is a Twitter example that anybody can find on our website where there's a video that talks about connecting to Twitter directly from InstaView and linking multiple data sets. Another example is around Google Analytics and linking that into corporate data warehouse data. So it was a good question. It's something that a lot of people are interested in these days, and the key is having a tool that can not only visualize but also integrate the data together.
Okay. And another one was, can we incorporate existing data mining algorithms using R? So the answer to that is that Pentaho has its own data mining predictive analytics engine called Weka, and that absolutely can leverage R. So there is an integration capability between Weka and R. So one of our architects has written a blog on it. So it's pretty easy to find that back. If you just search for Weka and R, you should get some details on how you can leverage R from Weka. So that's definitely possible. Another question was, does Pentaho have more visualizations than you showed here, and do they all support big data? So again, a good question. So first of all, I'll tackle the second question. Do they all support big data? So yes, right? For us, big data is just part of a type of data source. It is not a distinction or a different type of solution. So the visualizations come as part of the the elements, the platform pieces that they're in. So if it's a report or a dashboard, or an analyzer view, an analytical view, all them support certain visualizations. And then on the background, they are connecting to certain data sources, and it doesn't really matter whether those data sources, are big data or more traditional relational databases. Obviously, like I said, there are some limitations in what certain database types can do. and that may restrict you from some of that. But other than that, pretty much they all support big data. And then one of the key capabilities of our platform is that it has an open architecture, and visualizations is part of that, in the sense that it is an extensible framework, so that you can extend it with more visualizations. There's a variety of libraries out there that are JavaScript-based or Flash-based or whatever, and you can easily integrate those additional libraries with the platform. Actually, last December, we ran instead of a 12 days of Christmas, we ran a 12 days of visualizations campaign, and we showed you how you easily could add 12 additional visualizations to the platform. Somebody is asking around the MapReduce algorithm in the chat session. What I recommend there is to review probably the first or the third webinar we did. That definitely went into more details about MapReduce. Showed some demos, showed some of the logic. So if you weren't part of those webinars, and I definitely would recommend to review them, and that will give you some additional answers. Alternatively, you can also go to pentahobigdata.com, and there's a whole series of videos on visual MapReduce and MapReduce in general as well.